Hello everyone and welcome to this new deepening video. I'm very excited because today we're diving into a very important and central topic to spiritual development, which is consciousness. Together, I would like us to explore what consciousness is, how it differs from awareness, and why it is so crucial to our existence. Are you guys ready? Let's get started. Let's first try to define what consciousness is. In general terms, the definition of consciousness is the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. It is often associated to awareness and wakefulness, but we'll see that it's actually quite different. The etymology of the word consciousness is quite interesting. It comes from the Latin cum scientia. The prefix cum means with, and scientia means to know. So it essentially translates into shared or common knowledge. I think here we already have something very interesting in the fact that, unlike what we might think, consciousness is not something exclusively individual. But we'll see later what this implies. Another important thing to consider is that consciousness also encompasses an intuitive idea of good and bad. And so it somehow ties to the notion of self. The self that is experiencing reality. Essentially, consciousness makes us, the subjects, the main characters of our perceptions and feelings. All right. Let's go a little further and delve into a crucial distinction that we would like to make. Awareness versus consciousness. They are not the same, but how can we distinguish between the two? So let's consider the various forms of life that we are all familiar with and that we all suspect have some sort of a consciousness or awareness. And let's ask ourselves a few questions. Are plants conscious of themselves? What about bacteria? Well, from a biological standpoint, these entities have awareness, which means that they respond to stimuli in their environment. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that they are conscious. We know that these life forms are mostly governed by chemical reactions, which are in essence automatic, making these entities mostly react to changes, right? However, complex defense mechanisms in very primitive forms of life indicate the presence of perception, which, as we saw earlier, is a component of awareness. What about animals? It is obvious that they are a much more evolved form of life that lives beyond chemical responses to changes, right? Animals are aware of their existence relative to other animals. Their sensory perceptions are far more advanced to the point that a primitive form of self is present. In essence, we could say that at a biological level, we deal with awareness, while consciousness seems to have something else, to be a step beyond that. Going back to humans, something that is very peculiar about us is that we possess what is called an ego. Ego is again from Latin and means the I. It is that part in us that says I am. And we would like to propose here that the ego somehow is or acts as an interface between our biological aspects that come from nature and our divine aspect that come from supernature. But we'll get back to this aspect a little later. So to summarize about consciousness and awareness, we could say that plants exhibit awareness, animals show self-awareness, but humans really possess consciousness. However, we should keep in mind that we are really dealing here with a spectrum, and that this hierarchy we just proposed is merely for the sake of simplicity and clarity. Finally, we would like to suggest that the level of consciousness is ultimately related to the individual, to the self, and that the assertion of the self correlates with the level of consciousness. All right, let's talk a little bit about a unique attribute of consciousness, which is free will. It is one of the most profound aspects of consciousness. But what is it exactly? Well, it is the ability to make choices freely, which means free from any apparent constraints. But also, ultimately, it is the ability to make choices that could go against our own nature. So let's ask ourselves, do animals have free will? Well, wild animals operate largely on instincts and survival, which does not allow them to express free will. Domesticated animals, however, exhibit behaviors that can suggest a limited form of free will influenced by their interaction with humans. Anybody that has a pet at home or who often interacts with domesticated animals knows that their behavior is quite different. They are capable of choosing, for instance, food that they like versus food that they don't, or a certain toy rather than another. And this is because they are in a human-shaped environment, and that this environment bears the mark of the human consciousness, allowing them to raise their level of self-awareness close to consciousness, and thus exhibit free will-like behaviors. But we could ask ourselves, if the level of consciousness of animals raises by being in close proximity of humans, what could raise the level of human consciousness? Well, humans have something beyond their biological nature, a divine part that enables consciousness and raises its level. It is this divine aspect in us that allows us to transcend basic biological imperatives, make choices freely, and envision a higher level of existence. So, talking about consciousness requires us to talk a little bit about the unconscious. And here we really have to re-emphasize on the importance of sensory perception. Because without sensory perception, we are really only left with this unconscious, which is a form of field that is filled with chaotic thoughts and idea of unknown origin and unknown nature. And our consciousness acts like an ordering light that is projected within the unconscious. And our ability to focus our attention onto something by raising our senses allows us to process more deeply aspects of the unconscious and transform them into knowledge. And this production of knowledge from the base material of the unconscious using our consciousness is the premise of our creative power. And this creative power is ultimately what sets us apart from the animal kingdom. It is because of this creative power that we can conceive that we possess something more than just our biological nature, something also capable of creation, the divine, and that our consciousness has to do with this part in us. Finally, we would like to bring to our attention that the divine is something that humans have in common. So thinking back to the beginning of the video, when we mentioned the meaning of consciousness as being knowledge in common, we understand now consciousness can also be understood as the common divine knowledge. So in summary, we hope that we've been able to explain in relatively simple terms this complex phenomenon that consciousness is. It is more than just awareness and self-awareness. It is, for oneself, the ability to order our experiences and thoughts and have free will. And it also is for the entire humanity a common connection to something greater. This is why we think consciousness is so important and central to spiritual development. It simultaneously is our unique link to the divine and our connection to the rest of mankind. So thank you very much for joining me in this exploration of consciousness. I really hope you found that video interesting, and if you did, please like, leave us a comment, and subscribe for more contents like this, and I'll see you next time.